Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cloud Wars Live, where we explore today's digital revolution by speaking with business executives and thought leaders who are changing how the world lives, works, plays, learns, and dreams. Our guest today is Harish Grama, General Manager of IBM Cloud Platform. And IBM and Harish are joining us today in our series called the Cloud Wars Top 10 Executive Insights, where we hear directly from executives at each of the top 10 cloud companies about their unique strategies and capabilities. So Harish, thank you for joining us. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Bob. Pleased to be here.
Wonderful. So Harish, I want to set the tone here for our viewers to let them know that in addition to being one of the top executives in IBM's cloud business, you've also seen the world from the other side over at JPMorgan Chase. So just give everybody a little perspective on your background and how that shapes how you view the enterprise cloud.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Bob. Growing up in IBM, as it were, and working on a number of products that I've taken to market, I've worked with banks for a long, long time. And as I transitioned to working for a bank, I said, how different can this be? I've worked with them, I've enabled them on my technology. I know how they work, and so it's probably the easiest transition to make. Well, as it turns out, I was on perhaps mile one of a 10-mile journey, just understanding the kind of business that a bank is in, the things that are important to them, the things that they have to worry about, is not a process that you typically see as a software vendor, but you certainly do experience it as a consumer working for the bank. Now, I won't say too much about the bank because I'm not allowed to, but I think suffice it to say it was a very, very different experience.
So Harish, it's a fascinating experience there. 22 years at IBM, a couple years at the bank, just an IBM customer, and now back at IBM heading up the cloud platform group. So you're in a unique spot to talk about a range of things, but we saw 2018. IBM posted $19.2 billion in cloud revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big, big number. What is it uniquely that these customers who could pick any sort of cloud vendor they want, why are they going to IBM for that business?
So, Bob, I think there are several reasons I can think of. First and foremost, if you think about IBM, we are, one of the few enterprise-grade companies. Companies have been building their software solutions and their IT solutions on us. They've deployed it for mission-critical workload. And that, really is where we need to see companies going in the cloud. It is very easy to build an application that uses a handful of cloud-native services that does, something like an analytics module or a reporting module, et cetera. But when you're talking about the heavy-duty enterprise applications that have been built for decades and decades, you need a company like IBM that understands the enterprise, and then introducing the hybrid notion also somebody, an enterprise that understands how to enable hybrid solutions, which I think is IBM's strength, and I would claim we're number one at that.
Yeah, and Harish, it's interesting you bring that up because, every one of the top tech companies I speak to, there are some that have been talking, and IBM certainly in this group, about hybrid for some time. Mm-hmm. Others are really jumping onto that, and it seems to have become now accepted as the model that big businesses are using as they move into the cloud because, all of their on-premise systems isn't just going to magically go away in a matter of weeks or probably a handful of years. So how is IBM trying to create a unique difference there with its hybrid capabilities?
So first, it starts out with our rich heritage in middleware, right? If you think about the platform as a service that everybody talks about, the way I think about platform as a service services is nothing more than cloud-native, developer-friendly, consumed and deployed by developers for the cloud, right? And IBM historically has had this really rich set of products as we do today on the middleware side. So taking a lot of that, recasting some of it into brand new cloud native services, a lot of it into brand new cloud native services, but as importantly, making that on-prem middleware more friendly and easily consumable by clouds, whether it's private or public, is a critical factor in enabling people and enterprises, right? I'll give you an example. We're all in on containerization and Kubernetes as the control plane for containers. One of the advantages of doing that is if you've written your Kubernetes service correctly on public cloud and have the same service on-prem, and in this particular case, you can think of in the future, not today, but in the future, of something like OpenShift. We have a very seamless way of running these pieces of middleware in containers on that kube control plane, on-prem and in public cloud. And we go a step further. Today, we're very close to kube upstream in our public cloud Kubernetes service. And we've taken our entire PaaS level services and we've recast them into cloud native services, also in containers managed by the same kube plane. So this gives you the portability, the flexibility of how much of your app you run on-prem, how much of your app you run on public. And in fact, we're writing it in such a way that if those containers are completely self-contained, like our middleware modernized, you can even take those and run them on somebody else's public cloud as long as they provide an industry standard Kubernetes service. So I think it's all these elements that make us the leaders in hybrid. And I certainly saw this amongst my peer group when I worked at the bank. They're all doing the same thing. They're discovering that it's great to go cloud native, but if you truly want to take your entire estate and transform 80% of it at any given point in time, as opposed to just the 20% of it, this hybrid method is really what works. And so kube on-prem, kube on the public cloud with a rich set of content is how I'd put it.
Okay. And Harish, if that's a great explanation of the technological capabilities. Now, if you shift that over to somebody who's the head of marketing or chief revenue officer at one of your customer companies, what are they, when they look at this and say, wow, this is great. Now I'm able to do these things today that I couldn't do before. What are the business advantages your clients are getting?
So there are several things I would point to. One is, it's the sheer estate that you can modernize and move to a cloud-like paradigm, whether it's private or public, right? And that's the true notion of hybrid. So you start to attack a much larger base of your app estate in the hybrid methodology. So that would be one. Second thing is everything that we do is completely open. I mentioned Kubernetes several times. It's open. We use Istio as a service mesh. That's out in the open as well. We're now, starting to back Knative, which will be the underlying Kubernetes-like control plane for serverless, for those who are really into serverless, and even for other things like Cloud Foundry applications. So this portability that it gives you, and the is customers like that, because a lot of people are really scared about cloud because they view cloud as very proprietary. And certainly some of our competitors have done that, where when you choose a higher value service to build your application, you kind of get stuck on that cloud. And we're doing everything possible not to get there, but to really base it on open standards, as I just mentioned. I think the other big thing is also security. If there's one thing we have permission out there in the industry and the ecosystem is to play on our strengths on security, right? We've got several things in the mix, but I'll refer to one thing that we just brought out recently. We've got this hardware security module that's FIPS 140-2 level 4, right? The real importance is level 4, which basically means a customer can come and get, a client can come and get this hardware security module where they can store their public key in it. And even we as IBMers, because it's level 4 compliant and the only one in the industry, we don't have access to that key. If we try to access it, it kind of disintegrates in some manner of speaking. So, it's really amazing. But once we turn that over to a customer, when they're done with it, if they're ever done with it, if they don't unlock it, it's a useless piece of hardware for us because we can't do anything about it. So I think it's things like that that give us the permission and make us so successful for our customers.
And as you describe some of these capabilities that you've just gone through, the open, the containers, hybrid, and so forth like that, Harish, the acquisition of Red Hat late last year seemed to be a real turning point for IBM. How's that affecting what the company's doing and the capabilities that gives you to offer to your customers?
So I think that's really a statement for the future, Bob. As you know, this is a rather large acquisition. We're still going through the regulatory requirements to, make sure that the EU and the US are, satisfied that this is not something that's going to end up being a monopoly and so on and so forth. So we actually have to be very careful that we don't do any deep integration until that integration is blessed. But you can think of the value propositions when it does happen, right? I mean, you've got Red Hat OS, which is arguably the most popular Linux out there. Little known fact, Linux has been popular for a long, long time, but only September of last year did it actually become the predominant operating system for the enterprises out there at about 51 or 52%, right? So even though something was as popular as Linux for as long as it has been, to cross that 50% threshold took a good long time. So that's one bookend, and every cloud provider uses it. And we want to make sure that we maintain that neutrality and its success everywhere. And the other bookend I would really say is their OpenShift, which is also based on Kubernetes, and their rich portfolio of middleware components. At the end of the day, it's all about choice. So if we can enable it on-prem, and if we can enable it on our public and several other public clouds, and provide people a rich palette, if you will, or a rich, portal of capabilities, service catalog was the term I was looking for, then everybody wins. And that's really what we're trying to do.
Okay. And Harish, it's interesting that IBM is one of a small number of the big cloud players that is active in all three layers of the cloud, the infrastructure, platform, and SaaS. Mm-hmm. What advantages does that give you in dealing with your clients?
So I think what our clients like is a consistent stack on which they can do their own application development. Because you have to see that IBM's largest customers are the large banks, right? As an example, there are other large customers in other verticals as well. Each one of these enterprises is an IT company in its own right. I mean, they have tens of thousands of developers. So you certainly need a very rich environment of tools and services so the IT people from these companies can actually write their applications to the lines of business and deploy it in a particular environment like the IBM Cloud. But then at the same time, if you can give them a choice of asking, what they would call the third-party vendor running on a fourth-party service, which would be us again, so they could have consistency in their stack from SaaS to PaaS to IaaS, that's something that people find alluring as well. In fact, early days yet, but we are working with a potential partner out there in the industry, a financial services company, where we want to build something like a stack that we would bless for financial services industries, right? And if we can get to that, then a lot of the SaaS vendors would choose this cloud out of choice, because once you run on us, you could claim to be compliant and secure and so on and so forth, which is the largest amount of work in building a platform for any one enterprise to use.
Harish, that's fascinating, right? Because a moment ago, you described how some of the big banks that IBM work with, they're almost like tech companies themselves with thousands of developers. So you put that sort of vertical market expertise, domain expertise together with IBM's capabilities, both in some domain expertise there and the technology capabilities. And then, so you're talking about the opportunity for customer and IBM to come together and co-create new products or services that would then be sold within that industry. Is that where you're headed?
That is one of the things we're definitely, thinking about. And, it's a longer term journey, of course, but we want to be the leaders in that space.
And Harish, how about all these expansive cloud capabilities that you've described, what's the link or sort of the on-ramp move into the explosive world of AI that's coming up? How's IBM positioned there?
So I think IBM's really positioned well there as, in the AI space. Every company wants to go there. Again, harkening back to banks, because that's been in my recent past. They have a wealth of information from their call centers and other customer interactions. Now, if they could create data lakes of this information and run some AI models on it, develop, train, and run AI models on it, there's a wealth of information to be gotten and insight to be gotten, right? Part of the issue with doing that is there is a lot of highly confidential PII data in those data lakes, right? And banks are not necessarily comfortable taking it and putting it out in anyone's public cloud. So when you have a hybrid capability like we do, you could actually create and train your models on public cloud because you get the best economics and the best time to innovation, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can take those same models and apply to something that's still on-prem, so you're not sending your highly confidential PII data out there. Banks view that as a particular strength of ours.
Harish, one thing too, I wanted to ask you a couple things about from the customer side. It seems that as we've discussed here a little bit, that the hybrid model is really taking hold as the way that businesses are going to move into the next 5-10 years or so. What's your sense of the mindset or the outlook on large enterprises that IBM deals with about the cloud today? Is their appetite to move to the cloud rising, and do they feel fully confident that that's a good direction to head in?
Yeah, and I think, like everything else, Bob, you go through your enthusiasm cycle and the disillusionment cycle, et cetera, et cetera. And I think, cloud is past that now. It's on the rise. And, some of the last standouts, the kinds of customers we've been speaking about here in the recent past few minutes, everyone's gotten their head around the fact that cloud is the place to go, right? I think part of the disillusionment, again, was trying to do everything from the get-go and brand new on public cloud, right? With the hybrid notion and the hybrid capabilities that we're leading with, and other banks or other companies are trying to follow with, that really allows you to get, as I was saying earlier, a much larger estate of your applications modernized and running on a cloud infrastructure and a cloud services layer, which gives them the ROI, gives them the ability to innovate and so on. And I think that's really what's getting them into adopting the cloud a whole lot more and not paying particular attention to whether it's on-prem or off-prem or what have you, right? I mean, a cloud is a cloud. If you do it right, you should get all the usual pay-as-you-go, dynamic resource consumption, all the goodness that goes with the cloud. And I think people are seeing that.
Yeah, and so Harish, maybe the last thing I wanted to ask you about was IBM, has its 110, 112-year history of, remarkable R&D capabilities. And some number of months ago, again, when for the calendar 2018, I think IBM again led, had more patents registered in 2018 than any company, and a vast number of those were in the areas of cloud and AI. Are you seeing, is the company able to more quickly move those things from the lab into, if not production, at least application on a customer side than before? So do you see that becoming one of the strengths that IBM has of moving things from the lab quickly into use for customers?
For sure. In IBM, we rarely patent things that we don't intend on actually building into our product set that serves our customer set, right? So most of our patents do make it into code that is deployed either in cloud or, in the case of software and on-prem on our customers' premises. We've always been the leader for as long as I can remember. Since 2012, we've had 9,000 patents in the cloud, AI, blockchain, security, domains itself. I mean, each year we do far more than that, but just in these new domains, over the past 6-7 years, we've had 9,000 patents. And as far as I can tell, that's more than number 2, 3, and 4 combined, right? So we're dead serious about, innovating on these new technologies. We've got a lot of it deployed. We've got a lot of adoption, and we just want to take it to the next level and maintain the leadership in.
So, Harish, final question. Anything that we haven't covered here today that you want to be sure to bring up?
I think as people think about hybrid, and they see some of our competitors now starting to bring their stack into the data center as well. I always believe that imitation is the best form of flattery, and so they clearly see the value proposition to the client of doing that. But how they do it, of course, is different, right? I mean, for us, it's all about being open and secure, but some of the others tend not to be open. So, just having a hybrid cloud that sits on-prem in our public cloud is not the be-all and end-all. You want to certainly ensure that it's things like open and secure as well. And I would just tell them to pay attention to that.
So not all hybrid is equal.
Indeed, not all hybrid is equal.
Yeah. Well, Harish, thank you. This has been great, given some great insights into what IBM's doing with the cloud, why it's unique, the value it's driving toward customers, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you, Bob. Pleasure speaking with you as well, and thank you for your time.
Of course, and thank you as well to all of you in the audience for joining us here at Cloud Wars Live. This was part of our series, the Cloud Wars Top 10 Executive Insights with Harish Grama, General Manager of the IBM Cloud Platform. We hope you'll tune in. Share your feedback with me at bobevanspa@gmail.com. Thanks very much for joining us.